Good day, folks. Welcome to Monitoring and Evaluation Made Simple. I'm your host, Coach Alexander. Today, we'll be looking at a very interesting topic, how to monitor and evaluate a project, part one. Okay. And I know you may be asking why the part one? Well, because I'm going to be releasing 7 different parts of how this is done. And mind you, I've been doing this for 10 years now. I want to show you what has been working for me and what can work for you. Okay. So if you are here for the first time, please follow through this 7-part series. But before I go any further, there are these 2 ebooks which are totally free. In the link in the description, you simply click the link, get these ebooks if you haven't done so yet. There's one on the logical framework analysis step-by-step guide, and then you've got the monitoring and evaluation beginner's guide 2020. Please feel free to get these because they are totally free, no strings attached. Then I also have a course which is running on Udemy, how to set up a monitoring and evaluation system step by step. So this is a good course. It's cheap. Okay. I kind of see $12 to be cheap, guys. It's cheap. You can enroll in this course and you get the maximum benefit from it. So please feel free to do so. The link is in the description. And please take full advantage of the timestamps because this is quite a long video. I feel that long videos are good for my audience because they're usually rich in content and I get to interact with you guys fully. So use the timestamps in order to get to the part of this video which is more relevant to you. Okay. So now without wasting any more time, let's get straight to the topic at hand. How do you monitor and evaluate a project? So now, you see, guys, in everything that we do, especially when it comes to understanding these things, we need to fish out the key words that we will take home as we are analyzing this topic. So, obviously, we want to fully understand what is monitoring and evaluation. And I know you always have an idea. Many people who come to this channel, either as the first time visitors or people who have subscribed already, they already know what monitoring and evaluation is because I talk about it all the time. But I still feel we should talk about it so that we can get the ball rolling. And I also want you to understand what a project is, okay? So that you fully appreciate how wide M&E is and how you can contribute to spearheading the M&E agenda. Okay, so monitoring and evaluation is used to assess the performance of projects. Okay, institutions, programs set up by government, international organizations, and NGOs. Okay, so this definition I just got it from the internet. There are tons and tons of definitions of what monitoring and evaluation is, okay? But in a nutshell, that is what it is. And the key thing you need to understand is that you are using this as a tool to measure performance, okay? That is what is key. And apart from that, we are not only interested in the performance of projects, okay? Because people, when it becomes like that, then you find that we are just interested in results without fully understanding how we got these results, okay? So that's not what only M&E is about, but it's also about learning. It's all about improving. It's all about evolving, okay? Because if you've noticed, I always give the example of how the cars, the vehicles we drive. You cannot compare the vehicles that were driven in the 1960s or 1970s to the vehicles we are driving now. Okay, these vehicles, friends, have evolved to a level where we are just at a whole different era of technology. And for us to have reached there, it's because of the learning. Human race is always learning. And it is through this learning that we are improving. We learn from our mistakes. Making mistakes is good because you become a better person, especially if you correct those mistakes and improve. So that is what M&D is about. So now the project, if we are to understand what a project is, it is interesting because, again, on the internet, there are different definitions, okay? There are different definitions, but I like to think of a project as the way it is defined, the way I've defined it in this slide. It is a temporal endeavor undertaken to create a unique product, service, or result. Okay? So now I gave you an example of the vehicles, okay? But let's go nearer to home. If you look at the many projects that are being run, you've got construction projects, you've got food and nutrition projects, you've got health projects, water and sanitation projects. You've all got these projects which are being run all over the world. Governments are pumping huge amounts of money at the expense of their own people just to have these projects running in other countries. Okay. So why are people putting so much effort in running these projects? Okay. Because these projects, dear friends, are creating a solution. For instance, if a road, people tend to think, that okay, when you tar a road, when you have a road tarred somewhere, it is just tarred for the sake of it. But the truth is that when you tar a road, you are creating markets, you are creating industry, you're creating jobs, okay? It is solving a problem, okay? That is what projects do. And it's also the same with food and nutrition projects. I mean, why do we have these food and nutrition projects? It's simple because you want to end poverty. Okay, that's the whole issue. Water and sanitation, the same. You want to and disease, because when there's lack of water, then even hygiene is a problem, and even health becomes a problem. So you want to remove disease occurrence happening in a certain area. What about the construction projects? Why do we have these housing construction projects? Okay, on one end you're creating jobs, and then on the other end, you're simply trying to improve the livelihoods of the people in a country. So now the question is, we have all these projects running and we know the reasons why they are running, but where does M&E fit in? Okay, well, M&E fits in the sense that these projects have to be done in a transparent, accountable, sustainable performance resource. I mean, it has to be done in a manner that it's going to be beneficial at all angles from all stakeholders. Okay. So there's something I need to tell you about transparency. In other parts of the world, if you go to the Western part of the world, okay, although they do claim there is no corruption, and I agree with them, corruption is airtight, okay, but it could be there. But if you go to other parts of the world, corruption is a huge problem. So you find that if you have projects running in a certain country, that is when it's even more important to have M&D systems running. Okay. But it's not really about trying to remove corruption. M&E is trying to let everybody know that you are doing the right thing, that it's going to benefit the right people. Okay. And we don't want trust issues to get in the way. And when I say trust issues, we are simply saying that people shouldn't doubt the work you are doing. You need to be able to freely show what you're doing to the world, because that is what M&E does. At the end of the day, if we look at accountability, I'm sure you've heard people say we have to hold you accountable for the mistakes you've made on this project. So that's what M&D does as well. It also holds the project implementers accountable for the work. And somebody has to pay for either a good result or a bad result. Okay? And I have seen, usually when it comes to accountability, people are usually probably looking for negatives, but it goes both ways. You should be held accountable for the good results, and you should be held accountable for the bad results. You should be held responsible for whatever comes out of a project. So the M&D system will show to the world, if the project failed, why did it fail? What can be done to improve? Who should pay for the cost? Sustainability is also another issue that M&D tries to answer. Because if you notice, these projects have a short lifespan. But the issue that where we want to go at the end of the day, is to have these projects running even when the donors pull out. Okay? So the M&D system will help answer those questions. How can the project be sustainable? It will answer the question as to whether this project actually fulfilled its intended objectives. Okay, its plans. Did it really fulfill them? And this is where the question comes in. If you have a project saying we want to reduce poverty by 15%, M&D will answer whether that really has happened. And this is the next part is the part I really love, guys, because sometimes, anyway, in most times, it is not always up to the M&D system to mobilize funds. You know, resource mobilization is tricky business, but I had to put it there because M&D systems, if you have a strong M&D system, that is what donors love. But it doesn't always guarantee to you that you get more funding, because quite sadly, the amount of money you receive from people is dependent on the people themselves, not on how much effort you put in. Okay? Because sometimes you may put in so much, but the people out there make the final decisions. Okay? But it's always good to have a strong M&D system, and when you have good results communicated to the right people, these people are willing to invest more in your project. Okay, so this 7-part series is going to explain to you how monitoring and evaluation is done using a practical example. Okay, I found a document on the internet which we're going to use when doing this 7-part series on how do you monitor and evaluate projects. So I'm going to use a practical example on something I got over the internet, and then we're going to discuss step by step how you can monitor that particular project. Okay, so guys, this was just an opening tutorial, okay, on how monitoring and evaluation is done. It's a 7-part series which I'm going to be posting regularly, so please tune in to my channel to get the latest posts. So if you want, you can write to me at coachalexander23@yahoo.com in case of any questions. So this is where we come to an end. I've been your host, Coach Alexander, and see you on the other side. Bye. Good day, folks. Welcome to Monitoring and Evaluation Made Simple. I'm your host, Coach Alexander. I'm so glad that you've joined me today because now we'll be continuing on the 7-part series, How to Monitor and Evaluate a Project. Okay, so this is part 2 of the series, and I hope you enjoy it. But before we go any further, as usual, I want to encourage all of you who've not yet downloaded these freebies. I call them freebies because they are totally free. Please do well to download them. One, you have the M&E Beginner's Guide 2020. Then the second one is the LFA Analysis Step-by-Step Guide. Two very important books, especially for the beginners. Please do well to download them. The link is in the description. Then there's this course, and I have to tell you guys, this is my best course out of all the courses I've done. It is the step-by-step on how to develop an M&D system, okay? And so far it has received good ratings, I must say. And it is one of the most cheapest courses you would get out there. So please enroll in it. It's only $13. It could even be less depending on how the Udemy algorithm behaves on a certain day. Okay, now this is a long video, so please do well to take full advantage of the timestamps in the description below, because you may not want to watch the whole video because you've got a busy schedule, so you just want to skip to the parts of the video that are most important to you. So take full advantage of the timestamps so that you derive the maximum benefit from this tutorial. So without wasting any more time, let's get straight into business, shall we? Okay, so the first step when you're doing monitoring and evaluation activities, you need to undertake a desk review. So this desk review is simply you reading all the project documents, okay? And the project document really details what the project is about. So you really need to understand what the vision of the project is. You need to understand its objectives, okay? You need to clearly understand these things. So why is it important? Okay, you have to really know from the onset what it is you're going to be measuring. From an M&D perspective, that is what we need to know, because from the onset, when we are sure of what a project is trying to achieve, it immediately clicks into our mind that indeed we have to be measuring this aspect. And because of that, we'll already begin thinking on how best we're going to capture this information. So in my personal experience, that's what I normally do. And there are so many different projects out there in the world that are achieving different things. But one of the most common ones is, for instance, does the project want to end poverty? Yes, I've seen a lot of projects that are being implemented that want to end poverty. Then you've also got those projects that want to improve incomes, and other projects want to also end gender-based violence, and so on and so forth. It's not limited to these three, but I've seen a lot of them. So as an M&D professional, that is really key. And the moment you determine what it is it's trying to achieve, then you'll find that as you read through the document, you get to tie the dots and get a clear picture of how you're going to collect this information, analyze it, and report on it. Okay, so then you need to, this is something I always talk about, and I'm sure for those of you who've been on this channel for a pretty long time, I started this channel back in, let's see, it was 2016. Yeah, should it be 20? Yeah, I think it was 2016. Yeah, you see, the thing is that it's all about understanding fully what the project is about. Okay, and in understanding that, you need to understand how much resources is dedicated to monitoring and evaluation. This becomes very important, because one of the things I've seen is that if you have a project that has deliberately put a budget for M&E, know that, and I'm telling you the truth, guys, know that you won't face any problems when it comes to implementation, because your budget is there. Okay, so nobody is going to question you, why are you doing this particular activity, because the budget is there, it's been planned for, and it is ready to be used. Okay, and you just have to use it. But if a project doesn't have a budget, okay, not even a small budget for M&E, and they tell you that it is hidden in quality assurance or anything like that, know that you're going to sometimes have to do a lot of convincing on why you should undertake certain M&D activities. Okay, but in my own personal view, every project should put M&E. It is just the rule of thumb. Okay, so now, like I mentioned earlier on, I thought of giving you a practical example of what I mean when I say you need to determine the objectives of a project. So there's a project I actually downloaded over the internet, and just give me a few seconds. We open that document and try to analyze this document, because this is actually the document we'll be using in the the next few videos that's going to talk about how to monitor and evaluate. So just give me a few seconds. Hi guys, welcome back to the document I was talking about. And I got this document over the internet. All right, there are so many documents on the internet, so I'd encourage you to snoop around, satisfy yourself. Okay, so this one is the Earthen Architecture World Heritage Program 2007-2017. Okay, so this was a project by UNESCO. Okay, so they even said, well, they even say World Heritage Earthen Architecture Program project document running from 2009. Okay, no, it's not 20, it's 2009 to 2017. Okay, so what I normally do, like if I don't have time, I'll just peruse through the project, and this is what I usually do. I'll just go run through the project and just try to appreciate, okay, what is it about, how much funding is there. Okay, funding sources, okay, they give you Government of France, World Heritage Fund. Okay, and then they give you the estimated budget. Okay, all right, then the executive summary is one of the most important parts of a project document you can read. Okay, and as you can see, they are saying ethnic architecture is one of the most powerful expressions of the human ability to create a built environment with the locally available resources. Ethnic architecture is characterized by a very rich and varied architectural and urban production. Okay, so you get to read what it is. Okay, so then you go to the aim. This is very important. So like I was saying, that you want to get to understand what exactly is this program trying to achieve. So it says the aim of the program is to develop appropriate methods and techniques for improving the conservation and the management of the different typologies of Earthen architecture. Okay, so I'm new to this, all right, and I definitely would have to do a lot of reading to fully understand this. But you can already see that in the executive summary, there's something you can derive from. You can really appreciate what it is they are trying to achieve. Okay, so this is a good document. So now, like I earlier mentioned, you get to understand what their objectives are. But what I normally do, I just scroll down the document looking for this guy, the logical framework. All right, which I'm going to talk about in the coming parts of this series. Okay, so see, this is the beauty of all of this. When you have a logical framework, life becomes so easy for we, the M&D experts, because everything is spelled out. All right, they give you the objectives. What's the objective? To improve the management and conservation of earth and architectural properties. Then what are the indicators? Conservation and management activities are implemented, contribution to the improvement, all these activities, I mean these indicators. Then you've got also indicators here, number of studies at sites and evaluations of past interventions undertaken. So you can already see that things just fall into place when you just go to the logical framework. And this is what I like to do. Personally, I'll just go to the log frame and just have a brief understanding of what it is trying to do. Okay, so after you do that, then there is another stage to it. So for now, in this part 2 of this series, we're going to end here for today, but join me again as we look at this program document and see, after you've now analyzed the objectives of this project, what is the next stage in the monitoring and evaluation cycle. So I've been your host, Coach Alexander. Until we meet again, see you on the other side. Bye. Good day, folks. Welcome to Monitoring and Evaluation Made Simple. I'm your host, Coach Alexander. I'm so glad that you've joined me today. We're going to be looking at how to monitor and evaluate a project, which is part 3 of a 7-part series which I'm releasing this week. If you haven't done so yet, please subscribe to this channel, because on a daily, weekly, and regular basis, I post updates in monitoring and evaluation. But if you haven't done so as well, please download these totally free ebooks. Okay, the link is in the description. You don't have to pay for anything, because this is totally free, no strings attached, guys. And I have a course which I'm running on Udemy called How to Set Up an M&D System Step by Step. It is damn cheap, $13. It may even be cheaper depending on how Udemy is feeling that day, because usually they do cheap, affordable things. So please do well to get through, buy this course, and you learn a great deal. Okay, so as usual, this video is long, but take full advantage of the timestamps which are in the description below, okay, so that you can get the maximum benefit from this tutorial. Okay, so now we'll be looking at how do you monitor and evaluate a project. In the last 2 parts, we talked about the need to do a desk review. So today I'm going to talk about why it's important to define the key performance indicators and how do you do it. So first of all, I want us to understand what are the key performance indicators. If you've been on my channel for a very long time, you realize that I've done a lot of videos on key performance indicators. And quite sadly, I don't know what it is. On YouTube, I don't get the views that I'm looking for, because I feel that this is very important, understanding the key performance indicators. And I feel that many people need to understand this, because this is really why M&D professionals are born, because of these key performance indicators. So key performance indicators are actually variables. Okay, so when you hear the word key performance indicator, what should come into your mind is that these are measurements that you use to gauge whether a project is achieving its objective or not. Okay, so you have these variables, they can be going positive, they can be going negative, depending on how an objective, depending on whether you're achieving your objectives. A good example of a key performance indicator is, for instance, if you have a project which wants to reduce poverty and hunger in a certain community, a good key performance indicator could be percentage of people living below the below $1 a day. Okay, so that could be an indicator. So as you can see from that indicator that I've mentioned, it can either be a positive indicator or it could either be negative depending on what you measure at a given point in time. So these indicators are at different levels, and this is something you really need to understand. And at these different levels, you discover that monitoring is usually done at the the last two levels in this which I have shown here. Okay, I'll explain further. You see, you've got the input indicators, which are basically what you put in. Okay, the resources. All right, so if for instance you are pumping in a lot of resources in terms of money, in terms of time, those can be measured using indicators. Okay, then you've got the output indicators, which are basically the outputs of certain activities, the final product, okay, of an activity. So for instance, if you are conducting trainings on how to build a dam, if you are training people on how to build a dam, those people will be trained, will have the skills, and the final thing they come up with is a dam. All right. Okay, a dam is basically, or maybe I'm using the wrong example. I don't want to be too complicated. I could also use a house as an example. You train people on how to build a very good house. The final product they come up with is a house because you've trained them. So the output there is that house. And there's that of um, chain of results that come out as a result of having these trainings and bringing out the outputs, which later translates into an outcome and impact. Okay, I hope I'm not being too confusing, but I'm sure you can get the sense of what I'm talking about, because in many of my videos I do talk about these different types of indicators. I do talk about what's the difference between impact and what's the difference between outcome and outputs. Okay, so let's go on further. Okay, so based on the example, you remember I talked in my previous presentation, in the previous tutorial, which was done actually a few hours ago, which was yesterday. I talked about the need to look at the project document as a way of desk review. But then I also talked about the need for you to look at the log frame, because that is what I always do, guys. All right. I always look at the logical framework matrix in order to get a sense of what is happening, because it's easier that way. It gives a summary. Okay. So I did uh, use an example of a program was being implemented by the United Nations through one of its agencies, and clearly they had everything in order in the document, and I also touched a bit on what the indicators are. So just give me a few seconds. Let's go to that document and see where the indicators are. Let us define these indicators together, okay? Because that is one of the steps when you have to do monitoring and evaluation. So just give me a few seconds, guys. Hi guys, welcome back. Okay, so this is the program I was talking about. If you were watching my previous tutorial, I'm sure you got to appreciate that indeed this is a very good program that was being implemented by UNESCO. Okay, so like earlier mentioned, if I'm feeling lazy, I'll just look for the logical framework matrix. Some project documents, you'll be shocked, don't even have a log frame, but I wouldn't expect that from well-renowned organizations like UNESCO to miss such things. So I just go to the logical framework like this. So there is the logical framework. Okay, so I look for the matrix. So this is the actual matrix. So now, as you can see, there is this intervention logic, which is simply just telling you how an output translates to an outcome, how an outcome translates to impact. Okay, so it's just giving you some logical flow. But my area of interest is the indicators, the key performance indicators. Sometimes they call them objectively verifiable indicators. Okay, or some people just say indicators. You just have to say indicators and we all get what you're talking about. So normally what I do, I'll look for the indicators. Before I go in the field to monitor anything or evaluate anything, I'll look for the indicators, and these are the indicators. So for instance, you have the development objective, which is to improve the management and conservation of earth and architecture properties protected under the World Heritage Convention as an important tool for sustainable development. So now the indicators that they devised was conservation and management activities are implemented. All right. So those are the indicators. Now, let me tell you one thing, guys. It's not that I definitely have my own limitations when it comes to implementation of M&D. But one of the things I've seen, even with renowned organizations, sometimes they don't define these things carefully. Okay, and you find that, like, if it's defined this way, conservation and management activities are implemented, it doesn't really give you what exactly, it doesn't give you that sense that this is actually a variable. Okay, because an indicator should be a variable that can either move upwards or downwards. But without, let's not touch maybe this one, let's touch this one. It says number of studies at site and evaluations of past interventions undertaken. So this is the indicator for the specific objective one, to develop appropriate methods and techniques. Okay, so now when they say number of studies at sites and evaluations, they are saying that they actually monitor this annually. Okay, or they have the individual activity reports. So the point I'm trying to say is that in one year, the number of studies conducted could be, let's say for example's sake, could be 10 studies conducted. But the following year, it could be 9 studies, and the year following that could be 13 studies. So you can see that over a period of time, this indicator can be shifting, it can be growing, it can be going downwards. Okay, that's what an indicator does. So now, when you have identified all these indicators, all I do is, let me open my notebook, or maybe there isn't really any. Okay, so what I'll do, I'll just highlight, okay, like that, copy and paste the indicator somewhere. All right, and I've already done this. I'm just showing you what I do normally. So let's say these are the other indicators. I'll copy this indicator, copy it and paste it somewhere so that I get a sense of what the indicators are. Okay, I do the same with this indicator. I copy it and paste it somewhere. So I already did this, guys. So let's see what I did. Give me just a few seconds again to switch places. Hi guys, welcome back. So as you can see, I have copied and pasted all the indicators, all right? Because that's what you're supposed to do. You need to be familiar with all the indicators, okay? So as you can see, I've copied and pasted all the indicators up to this level. So if you look at, sorry about that, if you look at the project, you'll discover that there are actually 34 indicators in this project. And what that tells you is that these are indicators that need to be monitored and evaluated. So now I have to tell you that, like I earlier mentioned, depending on the level of the indicator, it will tell you whether you should be actually monitoring it or you should be evaluating it. All right, let me explain. For instance, these high level indicators, like the ones which you saw at the highest level, those are usually the impact indicators. And usually those kind of indicators, because they are not monitored frequently, and because it takes time to see change, those are indicators that are done at an evaluation stage. So you hire a consultant to determine whether change has happened. But for indicators that are collected regularly, that is where you do the monitoring. And these are the indicators such as number of trainings, number of participants who attended those trainings, okay, number of activities conducted in the quarter related to whatever thing you are promoting. Those are normally the routine indicators. Okay, so guys, as you can see, this is the next step you do. You just need to define the indicators. I usually list them down. There's something I need to also mention is that you need to do what is called indicator referencing. So all these indicators need to be clearly defined, and you need to fully explain how you'll be deriving them, analyzing them, and reporting on them. Okay, so that's all I had for you guys. I sure hope you enjoyed this presentation, and in a few hours time I'm going to be releasing part 4. So at this point in time, I want to say bye until we meet again. See you on the other side. Bye. Good day, folks. Welcome to Monitoring and Evaluation Made Simple. I'm your host, Coach Alexander. We're continuing in our 7-part series, How to Monitor and Evaluate a Project. Today we're doing part 4, Development of Data Collection Tools. But before we do so, as usual, please guys download these 2 free ebooks. One is Learn Logical Framework Analysis Step-by-Step Guide. Then you've got the Monitoring and Evaluation Beginner's Guide 2020. I want you to download these free ebooks because they're meant for you. Then also, please do well to enroll in this course, How to Set Up a Monitoring and Evaluation System. It's a good course. I won't talk much about it. It's very cheap. If you're here for the first time, please take advantage of this course. As usual, this is a long video. Please make good use of the timestamps because those timestamps are meant to improve your experience as you watch this video. You don't, if in case you don't want to watch the whole video, you can skip certain parts of it so that you get the maximum benefit from the content. Okay, so now the keywords. I always start with the keywords. Data collection tools. What are we talking about? Well, a data collection tool, guys, is an instrument used to collect data on the indicators, okay? So remember in the previous presentation, I really talked about this. I talked about the indicators as a very important part of what we do as M&D professionals. So now in order to get that information that you're looking for, you need an instrument. Let me give you an example. Take, for instance, these surgeons around the world, these surgeons who operate on people that are sick or even plastic surgery, they have different tools they use to carry out their work. So it's the same thing with us. we have instruments that we need to use when it comes to collecting information. So the most common tools in the 10 years that I've been practicing M&E are the forms, all right? Okay. These forms can be digital, all right, and that is where you find people using the mobile platform to collect information. Yeah, I can give you another example. Just a few weeks ago, I was doing a review of a mobile and an M&D online data collection system called Tula Data. Yeah, you can do forms, I'm sure, with them as well. So those are the digital forms. Then you've got the common hard copy forms, the traditional ones which we are more familiar with, which are the questionnaires, which you distribute to different people or stakeholders depending on how they feed into the M&D system. Okay, so I'm sure you remember these indicators. In the previous presentation, I talked a lot about these indicators, and there were about, I think, 34 indicators in the project that we are considering, and I do believe we're going to try to analyze this further. Okay, so with all these indicators, for you to collect information on these indicators, you need the tools, you need the instruments. Okay, that's another, yeah, so these are the same indicators which we were considering in the previous part of this 7-part series. Okay, so there are 34 indicators, and let me tell you something, in many projects there could even be more. If you go to the World Bank website right now, you're going to see hundreds and hundreds of indicators on that website. That's how important it is to collect information. So there's something I wanted to talk about. It is the indicator reference sheets. Okay. You see, indicator reference sheets, these are so important because what you're simply doing is you're trying to explain what these indicators are. Okay. So that you have one standard definition. So this is something which you need to do as M&D professionals. You need to populate this form. Okay, it's not a questionnaire, but it's just a management tool to help you understand what these indicators is. So this, I'll show you an example shortly. Okay, but let's move on. So tips in developing data collection tools. All right. So now the one of the most important things, guys, is you need to refer to the M&D framework. For those of you who don't know what a monitoring and evaluation framework is, it's a framework that is derived from the log frame, okay? But it tells you how each of the indicators will be monitored and evaluated. So it will tell you how the information will be collected, when it will be reported on, who will be reporting it, and it will also explain the baselines. It will give you values on the baseline and the targets, okay, and the results every year. So now what I've noticed is that these frameworks are not always there, okay, and this is where sometimes it can be a challenge for especially M&D officers that are joining a new organization or a new project, but that project doesn't have a framework. Okay, so in such cases you need to develop one, but if there isn't any buy-in from management, and I've seen this a lot, and quite sadly, I don't understand why in this day and age people are resisting monitoring and evaluation when there are so many good things about it. But anyway, that's a discussion for another day. But in case there's resistance to have this framework developed, you need to go to the next point which I've shown here. You need to try to establish how information is collected, okay, for the different indicators. And a good way to establish this, guys, is to determine at what level these indicators are. So in case you may not know this, and but you should know this, is that if you are talking of the high level indicators, these are indicators that are not regularly monitored, okay? And actually, because they are not regularly collected, analyzed, reported on, these are the indicators which are only collected, analyzed, and reported on at the evaluation stage. So if, for instance, your project is scheduled to do a midterm evaluation, that's the best time to have the consultant collect this information. If it's the end line evaluation, that's the time when the consultant can collect this. So I'm talking about the impact indicators and outcome indicators. Those are the high level indicators. So you need to determine that so that you know exactly whether it is really your role to develop the tools for these, the data collection tools for these indicators. Because if these are being collected from the by the consultant, then the consultant will develop the tools so that they can collect the data on them. But there's another side to it. I'm sorry I'm talking a lot right now. I'm spending a lot, but I want you to understand this. There's another side to it, guys. You see, in as much as evaluations can be done by consultants, but you as an organization can also do your own internal evaluation. All right. So in that case, there is no harm in you developing tools at this level. Okay. And when you do an internal evaluation, what that does, it's just for your internal use. But of course, the consultant can be given finished with the report and they can appreciate and compare notes when they're doing their own collection, analysis, and reporting. Then, when you've got the indicators and the input indicators, that is where monitoring takes place. Okay. So, that is where now most organizations have to develop their tools. Okay. So, now there are the indicators again. So, I wanted us to talk about this particular indicator, number of professionals trained, right? Okay. So, that's an indicator that I have thought of maybe using as an example so that you get to understand what exactly we are trying to do, what tool we develop for this indicator, number of professionals trained. So the first thing you need to do before you develop the tool, you need to really brainstorm, okay? It's really important that you try to brainstorm on this particular indicator. So one of the things which help is to have, of course, the indicator reference sheets developed for each of the indicators. But in this particular case, you need to also understand what type of indicator this is. Is this a high level indicator or is this the low level indicators? So in your brainstorming session, you discover that trainings, if a project is engaging, if any project is engaging in training of beneficiaries, in training of professionals, whatever trainings. Trainings are activities that are done on a regular basis. They could be done on a weekly basis, they could be done on a monthly basis, depending on the design of the project. So, with such an indicator, you already know that this is your baby, you just need to develop monitoring tools. But then you also need to fully brainstorm that how are these trainings, how often are these trainings done? Okay, because of course that will help you determine how often they should be reported on. And you also need to analyze what dates, who is being trained, whether there are any feedback mechanisms when these trainings are done. Okay, so you're just trying to think outside the box so that you have a tool that is going to be fully appreciated. Okay, so now give me a few seconds, okay? so that we do things in practice. Okay, I give you that practical know-how of how it is done. Okay, just a few seconds. Hi guys, welcome back. All right, so now I wanted just to give you an example of the indicator reference sheets. Okay, so this is not the data collection tool, but it's something that can help you appreciate why you need these indicator reference sheets and how they relate to your tool. So as you can see here, this is just a simple example. So the indicator that a certain project is measuring is contraceptive prevalence rate for modern methods. Okay. Then it goes on to define what this indicator means. So the definition is here, as you can see. Okay. So it gives you a precise definition so that if for instance you're an M&D officer, you find a better job somewhere else, the person that will take over your job should have the same understanding of what this indicator is. Okay, then it tells you what unit of measure it is, it tells you the method of calculation, it tells you number of who say they are what, tells you everything. Okay, so this is also important. The method of calculation helps you appreciate how you're going to calculate. But now let's go to the data collection. Data collection method, National Household Survey of Women of Reproductive Age. So already they're telling you how they collect this information. Okay, so it's really interesting, not so? Okay, so now I'm giving you just some kind of, just so that you could understand. But let's look at now how you can apply this to the indicator that I chose. Okay, so now this is a blank sheet of paper. Okay, so you can already see that there is a blank sheet of an indicator reference sheet. So simply what you do is that let's just fill in the areas that are relevant. So remember, we're looking at the number of professionals that are trained. So you just simply type number of professionals trained. Okay, that's all you do. So if this indicator was established in April 2001, fine, you can put it there. If it was reviewed in August 24th, 2002, you can also leave it there. Then the definition, okay? You can put in a standard definition and say um, this is defined as the number of people, whether male or female, who are professionals but have been trained in, let's just think of some other, like in agriculture. Let's just put it as a training definition, agriculture. Okay, so you've given a standard definition. So you say this is defined as the number of people, whether male or female, who are professionals but have been trained in agriculture. Okay. Then let's just go to, so the unit of measure, you can say number. Okay. All right. You're just looking at the number of people. Then the data collection method is, you can say monthly, I don't know whether we can say, should we use surveys? Okay, maybe monthly, we can't say monthly surveys, but we can say monthly monitoring visits to the training sites using the monitoring data collection tool. Okay, So you can already see how things are flowing. Then when they say timing and frequency of data, you say frequency of data collection is monthly, okay? You can say monthly. So this is just an example, just so that, but ideally you should fill in everything. So now the point is that after you have filled in everything, you'll be able to see that, okay, this is making sense to me now. So how can this help me come up with a tool? All right. Okay, so you know that this is done monthly and you know that you have to visit training sites. Okay, so let us quickly come up with a data collection tool. Okay, let us quickly come up with a data collection tool. All right, I'll just create a new page here. Okay, all right, guys, I hope you're not getting bored because this is very important. Okay, I usually like doing things in landscape. Okay, so now it has come to, yeah, there is the landscape. Okay, so you can say, you can title this data collection instruments for monitoring number of trainings. It doesn't need to be this long, but the point is that you just want people to know that what exactly this is. Okay, so now remember in our brainstorming session we were saying that um, the frequency of data collection could be monthly, not so. Okay, so definitely in your collection of data, you should be able to know the month in which the training was done. Okay, so let's say we put up a box there. I know you it can be any format. Okay, you just do this. Put up a box so that you can say you can be neat. So you can you can say name of M and E officer. Okay, then if let's say you put the name of M and E officer monitoring. Okay, then you can say date. Okay, this is just common information. Then you can say maybe state, training, name of training site, name of training. Okay, sorry about that. Name of training site visited. Okay, you can put it there just like that. Ah, come on. Okay, name of training site visited. Then you can say what else? What else do you need to know? What else do you need to know? There's the date, name of training site visited. Okay, maybe this is just enough for now. Okay, just something like that. Okay, you can have it in whatever format you wish. Okay, there's a box. Then what I usually like to do is maybe if you're going to monitor a number of trainings, you can simply say, you can simply come up with another box. Okay, then you can say, because let's say you're going to collect this information from the training site and they have their own records. Okay, so you can simply say number of males trained. Okay, then you can say number of females trained. Okay, then total, then you just have the number there. Okay, then you probably want to number your things there. Okay, and actually come to think of it, maybe you don't even need to put the name of training site visited. You can actually put it here. Okay, name of training site visited, then you just um, you can just put it like that. And then actually so you can also get the sense that sometimes it's just about you playing around with things, and you as you do this often you get better at it. Date visited. Okay. Okay. Okay, then you probably say date of training. You can say date of training. Okay. Okay, so you can already get the sense of what's happening here. Then you cancel all that. Okay, so now you can already see the form. You see how beautiful it looks, huh? Because let's say this training is being done at different sites. You as an M&D officer, all you have to do is fill in the data. So if this is a site in a certain project area, you just fill in the information here, the date you visited it, and then maybe you can say signature of M&E officer. Okay, then you put your signature there, and or maybe signature of training officer, let's say, there, and then this is more like a quality control measure, and then you have verified by the M&D officer. Okay, verified by the M&D officer. Okay, so can you see how easy it is to develop a data collection tool? Mhm. Can you see how easy it is to develop a data collection tool? So this is just for trainings, number of trainings, but you could see that there are different there are additional indicators that that this project is measuring. So you can actually combine more data on just this one piece of paper, okay, from those other indicators that the project wants to measure. Okay, so you can already see what we're talking about. Because of your brainstorming, you realize that actually you're doing monthly monitoring visits to the training site. Okay, so now this is you actually have to also put the month. Okay, when it's done, month conducted. Okay, you put the month, then of course the date is there, but you know how it is, just for consistency. All right. Okay, so guys, I sure hope you really enjoyed this tutorial. Okay, it's not a perfect thing. I've done more complicated data collection tools, but I want you to know that this is the right way to do it. If you have any questions, please write to me. So this is not where it ends. Join me again as we continue understanding how monitoring and evaluation is done. Until we meet again, I've been your host, Coach Alexander, and see you on the other side. Bye. Hi, guys. Welcome to Monitoring and Evaluation Made Simple. I'm your host, Coach Alexander. I'm so glad that you've joined me today because we're continuing on the 7-part series, How to Monitor and Evaluate a Project. So, in the past 4 parts, we've been learning about how you can do this all the way up to developing data collection tools. Now, after you've developed the data collection tools, now that is when you have to engage in the data collection, data entry, and data analysis. So, this is what we're going to be talking about today. But before we do so, I just want to encourage you, for all of you who've not yet done so, please download this free ebook. Actually, there are two of them. Learn Logical Framework Analysis Step-by-Step Guide, and the M&D Beginner's Guide for 2020. So as usual, this is a long video, but I really want you to take full advantage of the timestamps which are in the description below. Please take full advantage of those because it will help you navigate this long video with ease. So without wasting any more time, let's get started with it, shall we? Okay, so what is data collection? You see, guys, data collection is really a process of now gathering the information that you need, the information that you use to report on the progress of a project. So, as you may be well aware, all projects have their own objectives that they want to achieve at the end of the day. But in order to see whether these objectives are being met or not, you really need to identify them. And once you have identified them, you develop the data collection tools as we discussed in part 4 of the 7-part series. And then you now engage in the data collection. So you need to collect this information. Okay, now there are different types of data. I know you probably have learned what data is at this point, but I want to let you know that there are different types of data that is collected. You've got the primary data that is collected by a researcher. Okay, it could be anyone. And actually, the way it is that in your case as an M&D specialist, you're simply going to collect the data yourself if it is the primary data, or you may be using enumerators to do it for you. So when it comes to primary data collection, you're using methods like surveys, one-on-one interviews, or experiments. Okay, so the whole point is that for you to know that you are using a primary data collection method, it is where you do it firsthand by yourself. Okay, now what about secondary data collection? Well, secondary data is data gathered from studies, surveys, or experiments that have been done by other people already. So this is a very good scenario which I've personally um, gone through. Okay, but actually, the truth of the matter is when you're doing this data collection, the primary and secondary data can work hand in hand. But what I've noticed is that secondary data will come into play, especially when you don't have, when it's quite expensive to collect certain information, okay? And in most cases, it may be beyond your scope. So you might want to use other people's work, but don't forget to cite that work, all right? Especially if these are documents that have been done by other academicians. It's always good to cite their work. Okay, so how is primary and secondary data used in monitoring and evaluation? Okay, so in M&E, if you're doing it by yourself, you could, you know, okay, let me just read what I've written, but I know what I wanted to say. It says in M&D, if you are collecting data by yourself using your own time and financial resources, your own data collection tool, and personnel, then this is the primary data collection method. So I just wanted to bring that point clearly. Okay, it all comes down to you being in control of the data collection, the analysis, and reporting. Okay, but if you are collecting it from other sources like the Central Statistics Office, evaluation reports done by other consultants, or other sources of information, then it is secondary data. Okay, so this point is clear, guys. Okay, so you need to know these following tips that I want to just share with you. Okay, primary data is usually collected for indicators that you can control. All right, and I have seen this. It's not that it's something that just came out of my head. This is something that is true. Let's say, for instance, your target is to have 1,000 people trained. Okay, so those 1,000 people trained is a target that your organization has set aside. It's just an example. So imagine you want to have a target of 1,000 people trained by January 2021. So now the first thing that you know you can do is that, because it's in your control, is you can work day and night to achieve that target. All right, until you actually achieve it. All right. So it is something that you can control, but things that you can't control are targets like climate change targets, for instance. You can't control the weather. Like if there is a project out there saying that a sustainable environment uh, by 2021, blah, 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 I can tell you that it's not something, those are high level indicators that you can't really control. But actually, they could be measured by researchers out there who are conducting these regular papers. So now, for high level indicators like that, you might want to you might find this kind of information from the secondary data sources. And like I mentioned, there are so many sources. One of them is the National Statistics Office. That is where you probably can gather information on high level indicators like that. I hope I'm making sense, guys. Okay, so data collection continued. In collection of data, a data collection instrument is used. So that is the very tools you developed, the forms are actually the data collection tools. So you could be using questionnaires. The questionnaires are just one type of collecting data, but there are different types of doing this. You can also even just observation is a data collection method. Okay, so now once this data is collected, all right, once you collect this data, you're collecting data on all the different indicators in a project. Remember those indicators I showed to you. The next step is now to enter this data into an analysis software. And the common software that I personally use, okay, and which I have found user friendly, is Excel. But there are weaknesses with using Excel for surveys, especially large surveys, because you want to do a lot of good analysis. So I can recommend to you other softwares like SPSS, and then I'll also recommend to you, see at the end of this presentation, some of the softwares, some of them I've used, some of them I haven't used. So now what is the analysis? People will tell you they know about analysis, okay, but it is not always done the right way, okay, but that's a debate for the other day. But it's actually a process, okay. What you're simply doing, it's a systematic process of applying statistical logical techniques to describe and illustrate what the data is telling you. So simply put, you're trying to understand, what does this data mean? You're trying to add meaning to the data, because for instance, what is, 1 plus 1 is equals 2, right? That's the answer. But what does it really mean? Okay. Does it mean that, like, if for instance, we're saying 1 plus 1 is equals 2, does it mean that income has increased? Or does it mean that income has reduced? You know, that analysis will tell us whether there is indeed any significant meaning to raw data that we've collected. Okay, so in the analysis, guys, I talk about this in some of the courses which I'm hosting on Udemy. You need to really project exactly what it is that this data is telling you. The best way is to do it through presentation, graphical presentations like the pie chart. You've got the bars, all these things can be done by Excel, but even by SPSS, these things can be done. So the whole point is that you want to bring out that information so that at the analysis, when you present the information to management, they can make better informed decisions. This is another example I'm giving you. If you look at this presentation, you have the linear curve, but it's not linear, but I mean it's going in one direction. So this should tell you something about the data. Okay, so there are different types of data analysis softwares. We've got the GraphPad. I've never used this one, but it's there on the internet. Google it, try it. I would like to be trying some of these things, but I don't think I'm ready to start trying new things. But you can try it. It's called Prism 8. Okay, try it, satisfy yourself, see what it does. Then you've got what I always talk about, okay? And guys, I think SPSS for me is something I'm quite familiar with. I'm not a guru at it, but I can tell you one thing, that this is one of the things that is widely used all over the world. Previously, you could have this software on your laptop, I think, but now they have devised a way of having you pay on a regular basis. Okay, I mean, just to keep them in business. So this is the SPSS. You can try it. Just Google SPSS software, and it will pop up on Google. Okay, then there's this other one called XL Stat. I haven't really used it, but I think it is similar to Excel, so you can try it as well. Okay, so thank you guys so much. This is end of part 5 of the 7-part series on how to monitor and evaluate a project. So now we've looked at how you do the data collection. I hope you've enjoyed this presentation, but there's a lot more to it that that I haven't told you, but I'm sure as the months go on, I'll continuously release videos on YouTube explaining the process of data collection and analysis. So I've been your host, Coach Alexander. Until we meet again, see you on the other side. Bye. Hi, guys. Welcome to Monitoring and Evaluation Made Simple. I'm your host, Coach Alexander. If you're here for the very first time, do well to subscribe, because on a regular basis, I post videos in monitoring and evaluation. Today, we'll be continuing in the 7-part series, How to Monitor and Evaluate a Project. This is part 6, Reporting and Dissemination. Okay. But before we go any further, there are those 2 ebooks I really want you to download. One is on the Logical Framework Analysis Step-by-Step Guide and the Monitoring and Evaluation Beginner's Guide 2020. Please download these ebooks. They are totally free, no strings attached, and I want you to build your careers by reading these books. Okay? So as usual, this video is quite long because I want to explain quite a number of things to do with reporting and dissemination. So take advantage of the timestamps in the description below, so that maybe you don't want to watch the whole video but just certain aspects of this video. So without wasting more time, let's go straight into business. So what is a report? Normally we hear this all the time. Okay, we can hear it on the news. BBC is reporting, Sky News is reporting, and then we've got the reports we do in the offices. Okay, so I'm sure we don't even need to define this because we have an idea, but it's always good to have a general understanding so that we are all on the same page. So a report is a short, sharp, concise document which is written for a particular purpose and audience. Okay, it generally sets out and analyzes a situation or problem, often making recommendation for future action. Okay, so I got this definition. I thought this was a good definition from this website. You can click there if you have the time, copy and paste if you want. Okay, so the issue, guys, is that the reason why I really liked this definition is that it's talking about very relevant aspects of a good report. It should be okay. Of course, it may not need to be. Doesn't always need to be short, but I think the point is it needs to bring out the relevant information. It should be concise and to the point, and it should also address a particular audience. Okay, so I'll talk about this in the next slide. All right. So dissemination now is quite an interesting concept because when you have this report written, it is now time for you to disseminate it, to have the information spread out. So now you realize that when you're spreading out this information, it has to be spread out in a format specific to a specific audience. All right. Because that is when now you get these audiences assimilating the information, okay, because you've tailor-made this information for them. All right, so I'll get to that as we go on. So now, when disseminating and communicating evaluation results, key stakeholders are important. All right, you never leave them out because at the planning stage you got them on board, and because they were part of the planning, they probably were part of the actual M&E interventions. They deserve to know in a transparent manner. Okay, you shouldn't hide information from them because that can create an environment of distrust. So you have to get them involved from the start to the end. So this requires that as soon as the report is ready, let's say they know that the evaluation of a project has been done, they know about it, they even know when the report will be ready. It's important to work within the timelines because everyone is eager to get this information. So there are many different roles that M&D reports play. I want to make one thing clear, that at this stage, we are no longer talking about, it's not really about the monitoring at this stage, the monitoring reports, but we're actually looking at the evaluation reports. All right. I'm sure you fully understand that when we talk about monitoring and evaluation, we're talking about two different things, but that play very important roles. Okay. So why is it important for this information to be out there? Okay, so for instance, we all know that it's an accountability issue, and nobody can take that away from the fact that this M&E is holding us accountable for our actions, whether it is good, whether it is bad. Somebody should be held accountable for this, for the successes, for the failures. So the M&D reports actually bring out that. But it's also important to note that it's a tool that helps us convince others, especially when it comes to resource mobilization, and especially when you want to justify when a project should continue, it is only through the M&D findings. You also want to be able to educate the masses. You want to explore and investigate because ultimately what works, all right, and that's the fact of life. I always like to give the example of these vehicles that we drive today. 30, 50 years ago, when vehicles were first driven on this earth, they are nowhere near the way they are today. Today, we have vehicles that are just amazing, that are advanced in technology. And the reason why it got to that stage is because of that continuous learning, that continuous exploration, continuous investigation. That is what has made things the way they are today. It could be technology, cars, planes, video games, TVs, you name it. Everything has improved. Even medicine has improved because of the man's desire to learn and learn from their mistakes as well. It's very important that we document whatever we are doing, all right? And then we want to get stakeholders involved, of course. When we have these findings produced, we want stakeholders to scrutinize these findings and be able to ultimately critique and also gain support. All right. So we there are so many uses, but these are the main uses of the M&D reports. So now the format for a report is standard wherever you go. And I don't think I'll spend too much time on this one, except that on the list of Udemy courses that I'm running, that M&D Made Simple is running, it talks about how you can write an effective report. And the standards, you have the executive summary, clear description, statement, findings, conclusion, and all that. All those things should be followed. But like I earlier mentioned, this is now, we are talking about the evaluation report. Because usually the monitoring reports, guys, think about it. They are, when we talk of monitoring, we are simply collecting the routine indicators, and all these indicators feed into the evaluation report. Okay, so the monitoring findings feed into the evaluation report. So really the monitoring is not so much in depth. We are just simply tracking what was planned, the planned activities, how are we doing? And these are regular activities, but the evaluation looks at the bigger picture, looks at whether your project actually succeeded. And because of that, you have a very detailed report following the format which is presented to you. So now this is where it gets interesting. I don't know whether you guys have ever come across people. Let's say you're doing the right thing, you present a very detailed report, and these people come and tell you that your report is too academic. We can't understand anything. So that tells you something. So it's just coming down to this. When it comes to dissemination of information, you need to really take care of the audience, all right? So there are different dissemination channels. You've got the brochures, all right? You've got the annual reports, articles, news release, press conference, media, public meetings, seminars. The list goes on. But think about it. Let's talk about public meetings, all right? Or even the media. You know, the media, they have so many things to report about. So much is happening. Just a few days ago, the US got their new president, all right? So why would they want to spend so much time on your report, which is so academic, which is also quite complex to read? So when you're disseminating, at this stage, when you're disseminating your information, you need to really simplify it to the right audience. So if it's the general public and you want to talk about whether your project has empowered farmers or whether that project has led to reduced poverty in a certain area, that's simply what you have to say. You simply tell the media, you simply tell the public that our project has reduced poverty levels by this percentage. You don't need to go into detail and say, no, we use this methodology, academic principles in coming up with it. Of course, those are important things, but we don't want to get into so much detail such that everybody is questioning what are they really talking about. You just have to summarize, hit the point. If they have questions, answer their questions. But such information could be useful to researchers, academicians. If you want to get so detailed, it could be useful to such audiences. So the keynotes which I've been mentioning, and I've mentioned it again, is that at this stage when now you're going to disseminate information, you're really disseminating the evaluation report. Because when the project comes to an end, people are eager to know, what did this project do for the community? Did it really fulfill its intended purpose? So now that is where now you need to hire the right people to do the evaluation. Don't have consultants come and do the evaluation, and when they give you the evaluation report, you are left hanging as to whether your project actually made a difference or not. But you need people that are going to call a spade and hit the nail on its head. So what did this project really do? The conclusion should mention whether there was indeed any impact, or whether that impact could be established or was not established. Why wasn't it established? But what are the highlights? Things like that. Because I've noticed that some reports keep you guessing. That's not what it should do. So it's all up to you to lay it clear to your consultants, to your external evaluators, what is really happening. Mind you, you don't need an encyclopedia of a report. I'm an M&D specialist, but I don't like reading long reports because my eyes start to pain. Anyway, there is rich information, we know, but is there a way in which we can simplify things? Because it helps, especially when we are disseminating. So those are things to think about. That's why I see there may be no harm even employing communication specialists in your organization, because these people can look at your report, convert it into a format which is easy to communicate and send out the message. How are these evaluation results used? Okay, so evaluation results are so important, and it is the responsibility for managers to review these findings, to review the conclusion and recommendations. When the report is submitted for scrutiny by the consultant, we shouldn't be so quick to accept everything the consultant says. Let us scrutinize the recommendations, and then let us have it interrogated by the stakeholders. We have to really ensure that the conclusion comes out clearly. And it should be important to know whether in the future program there will be need to make adjustments. One thing I've noticed is that we are not willing to accept when we have done things the wrong way, when we need correction. So it's important, if the evaluation brings out negative things, don't always be too quick to take the offensive, because some of these things could be true. We need to look at ourselves with an independent eye and make the necessary adjustments where need be. With this evaluation results, we need to make follow-ups, which is critical. And in the next programming phase, it's important that we are all on the same page in terms of how we want to address the challenges that were identified in the previous program. Okay, so guys, that was all for today, and I'm so happy that you listened to this presentation. In the next part, please be on the lookout. I'll be releasing the last in the 7-part series, and I hope you all be there, because there's something special that I want to showcase to everyone that watches that video at the end of that video. So until we meet again, I've been your host, Coach Alexander, and see you on the other side. Bye. Hi guys, welcome to Monitoring and Evaluation Made Simple. I'm your host, Coach Alexander. I'm so glad that you've joined me onto this YouTube channel. And if you're here for the very first time, please subscribe to this channel, because on a regular basis, I post updates on M&E. Today is the last part of the 7-part series, How to Monitor and Evaluate a Project. Part 7, Learning and Corrective Action. But before we go any further, I just wanted to say that there are these 2 free ebooks, okay? One is Learn Logical Framework Analysis Step-by-Step Guide, and the Monitoring and Evaluation Beginner's Guide. I want you to download these ebooks. If you face any challenges, please feel free to write to me. One note, guys, if you're using Gmail, sometimes you may not see them on the main column, the main inbox, but the books usually come in the promotions tab. So be careful to check the promotions tab if you're using Gmail. Okay, so as usual, this is a long video, so please take full advantage of the timestamps, and please get the full benefit of this video without having to watch everything. Just go to the part of this video which is more important to you. So without wasting any more time, let's get started, shall we? Okay, so now, first of all, I would like to ask you this question. Why is it that we even do monitoring and evaluation? All right? At whatever stage in life, why are we doing this? Why do we even bother? Why do we even care? Why is it that the projects that are running have to go through this process? Think about it, guys. Well, ultimately, it's, as human beings, we want to learn. Okay, it's an issue of continuously learning from our mistakes, possibly even learning from our strengths. We always want to do the best. We want to achieve the best. That is who we are. The sky is the limit. So we do M&E because it helps us learn and it helps us correct things. It helps us make those amends, okay? So if you look at that image, that is what all of this is about, okay? We want to be perfect. We want to be the best that we can ever be when it comes to implementation of projects, when it comes to career advancement, when it comes to think about the things you want to do well, okay, in your life. That is why M&E is there. So I usually like to think of M&E more than the project part of it, but it's all about who we are inside as well. So now, I'm sure you see this image. There's an engineer and he's assessing a crack in a building. We all know what cracks can do. You know, cracks can do a lot of harm. So now, his area of interest is not to blame anyone. Okay, he goes there with an open mind and wants to understand why is a building cracking when you used the right personnel to do this building, when you pumped in money, when you got the right material, why is this building cracking? So from an independent perspective, if you're a person who likes witch hunting, the first thing you're going to do is say there's corruption. All right. But sometimes it's not always about that. It could be there is limitations in the personnel you used to build this building. It could be that, yes, these are engineers who built this building, but are they fully qualified? Does it help us see the need to really screen the people we employ for these projects? Or does it help us see the need to strengthen these people who are already employed, maybe giving them further training or maybe giving them further equipment? Or maybe let's look at it at another angle. Could it be that there was no money to build a solid building? Or could it be that there was an earthquake in that area which caused these cracks? And hence, what can we do in future to prevent a building from cracking? Perhaps we need to come up with technology that can resist earthquakes. So you can see the thinking process that is happening, from an independent person, as you can see on that picture, coming to assess why this is happening. So what is learning, guys? I'm sure you've heard of this saying, we learn from our mistakes. What do we really mean? Learning is really a process. I'm sure you go on the internet right now, you'll find a lot of articles about what learning is. A lot of journals that have been written to explain this learning. But what is learning? It's actually a process of acquiring new understanding, knowledge, behavior, skills, values, attitudes, and preferences. I like the way this has been defined because I always give this example. I don't know how many of you out there like the Mercedes-Benz vehicle or the BMW vehicle. Do you know that the vehicles that you see today, 20, 30 years ago, you probably wouldn't want to drive them? Do you know that? At least I do. Because when you see these latest luxurious cars driving around, they drive around with a lot of history. There was a lot of trial and error for them to come up with a product that when you look at it today, you just say, okay, this is kind of like perfection, but we all know perfection cannot really be achieved, but you really appreciate what is actually happening, the energy and time and effort that has been put into building such a very nice car. So for them to reach that stage, there were failures, there was a lot of learning. So the learning is really the process of learning. You need to test things, you need to experience things, you need to reflect. You know, one thing I have to tell you is that failure is not a bad thing. But in the NGO world, all right, If your project fails and you come up with a report that is bad, that can affect your funding. But that shouldn't be the case, because it is through the failure that we learn. And it is through this learning that things can become better. So all I'm saying is that, guys, don't be afraid to learn, to get better at what you do. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of time for learning, but every second counts, every minute counts. And sorry, I'm talking a lot, but I hope you're getting the point. So the corrective action now comes in when now you want to mend the mistakes you made in the past. So you saw that example of the building. It had so many cracks in it. So now it is determined that the people that built it were fully qualified, they had adequate resources, and there was no earthquake. But they only lacked one thing. They didn't follow the correct procedure when it came to erecting that building. And they are not a unique case, okay? There could be other similar cases. So now the question is, what do you do? What corrective measures should be done? There should be a unit that properly monitors these people who are actually building. Okay, and that's what happens when you learn. You see that, okay, could we put a unit that monitors these things? So you need to make amends. That is why, guys, when I look at M&D, I tend to think of it in a very detailed manner. Because the issue is that you want to grow. But growth, guys, growth doesn't happen instantly, doesn't happen instantaneously. There are processes. You need to learn to be patient with these things. But unfortunately, it is not like that. But in your personal lives, it should be like that. So we need to say that when we are taking corrective actions, we are making that commitment to bring about change, to bring about change in the way we do the project planning and the implementation. Sometimes we take focus too much on, they didn't do this the right way, they didn't mix the cement well, you brought in the wrong people. We spend too much time doing that. But how was our planning done? Did we plan adequately? Did we think through things? I have noticed, for instance, that sometimes when it comes to these project implementations that are happening around the world, at the planning stage, they don't involve M&D personnel. It's only after the project has already started running. Now, do you know what happens there? One, the baseline is not even conducted on time. Two, there is no system. You want the M&D officer to build a system there and then. While the project has been running maybe for 6 to 12 months, you're in your second year. That is not how it's done. M&D personnel should be brought in the project right from the very beginning. And it helps a lot when you do that, because one, you get all the indicators you need correctly done at the onset. That is one point, but I won't go into detail. Let's go to the next slide. So now, the M&E, you've got the monitoring, you've got the evaluation. I have to say for me, and this is, I know M&D goes hand in hand, but you have to agree that now the most sought for report is actually the evaluation report, because it is all encompassing and it gives you point blank, at least it's supposed to anyway. It's supposed to give you point blank without beating behind the bush that this project has succeeded in achieving its objectives. That's what an evaluation report does. And then it mentions why. It also mentions where you failed. Now, the evaluation process, since it is holistically done, it looks at so many things like the efficiency, the effectiveness, the sustainability, things like that are looked in when a consultant conducts the evaluation. So now, immediately the report is done, the project management team is supposed to review the findings and make the necessary comments. There is nothing wrong with commenting, all right? But one thing we should remember as management, if the results are poor, don't tell the consultant to change the poor results and make them look good, because then things get compromised. We need to really accept what is there. And for us to avoid, sometimes there are things we can control, sometimes there are things we can't control. But to avoid that embarrassment of having these poor results, it's always good to have a midterm evaluation. If you can't afford a midterm evaluation, let your M&D unit do an internal evaluation which prepares you for the final evaluation. So now, once the consultant has taken note of your comments, he or she will make the necessary changes and then the management team will approve the report as a working draft document. So as soon as that draft is approved, it is now shared to the stakeholders. And this is, to me, the most, I think it's the most important part of the whole learning process. The stakeholders need to be part of discussing the findings and seeing whether it's really reflective of what is on the ground. Okay, are they fully satisfied with what has been written? Those are questions that matter a lot. So usually the stakeholders who were involved in the planning of this project should also be involved in the evaluation. All right, because they have a very good input in the whole learning cycle. So now, one of the observations I've made in the 10 years I've been in the monitoring and evaluation profession is that sometimes we don't want to involve the beneficiaries themselves in interpreting the findings. You have these big meetings and you just have high profile stakeholders, but you don't bring in the actual beneficiaries who you were targeting to give you input on whether it is really reflective. So I think if you've been doing that, perfect. But if it's something you feel should be improved, it's important to do that, because then you are involving the stakeholders. They are also a stakeholder in all of this. Government officials are important stakeholders. I like to think of support, the project support to communities, as a supplementing effort. You are simply supplementing government effort. So usually I'm sure you've noticed that in this channel we talk about projects related to humanitarian, but even projects that are like done by the government themselves, it's obvious there should be government officials there. So now, when the discussions have been undertaken, all the stakeholders will agree to the recommendations, and then the report will be endorsed as a true reflection of the views of everyone. And this is when now you obviously now can offload the information to different communication channels. So now what does this do? It helps a lot when these recommendations have been documented and agreed upon, especially when now it comes to future programming. Because ultimately, we want to have good projects, good programs that are really making a difference. The thing is that I'm just touching on something else. It's part of this whole thing, but let me just touch on it. This issue of sustainability, you want projects to sustain themselves. The evaluation should fully touch on that. Is it sustainable? Is it not? If it's not sustainable, why isn't it able to sustain itself? And what recommendations should be put in place to make sure it's running? Because what happens is that if a donor pulls out these days, then the project dies indefinitely. Of course, okay, the thing is that as per definition, the project has a lifespan. That much we appreciate, but we all know what is there on the ground, guys. You have a project running 2 to 3 years, then they will have another project, the same project, but it's coming under a different name. Okay, so you find that in reality, it's just the same project running with the same donor, and it's only when the donor pulls out that it also dies. So this is something we really need to think about as a community and as at a global scale. How do we sustain some of these projects so that it really the impact is really seen over a long period of time? Okay, so thanks so much for being there, being here for this presentation. And if you missed out on the other parts of this series, please, you can, I have a playlist, refer to the playlist, watch all the videos and gain a further understanding on how M&E is done. So I think it has taken about 3 weeks now or 4, but I'm so glad you were here with me throughout the way. So until we meet again, I've been your host, Coach Alexander, and see you on the other side. Bye.